Welcome to On the Move with DelDOT. I'm C.R. McLeod, Director of Community Relations. Thank you so much for joining us for our latest podcast. Today, I'm excited to have a guest with us, Pam Steinbach. She is our Director of DelDOT Planning. And a very busy division. As many of you listening are surely aware, Delaware is seeing a lot of growth, especially in the southern part of the state. We've now exceeded 1 million people. It seems like it took a long time, but we are now officially have a population of more than 1 million people. And with that development comes a lot of needed coordination with our transportation infrastructure. And today's conversation is really going to focus on how does DelDOT work with our land use process throughout the state to ensure that our transportation infrastructure can safely accommodate the growth that's happening and ensure that we continue to help people get to where they need to be as safely and easily as possible. So Pam, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Pam, tell us a little bit about your career with DelDOT.
Of course, yes. So I have been with DelDOT for 21 years. I am a lifelong Delawarean. I grew up in Bear, went to the U of D, Go Blue Hens, for my for college. And so I grew up in Bear, but then I moved down to Dover about 7 years ago. So the great thing is that I've been in a lot of different sections. So I was in project development, I've been in maintenance, in quality, and now I'm in planning. So it's very exciting to see the broad spectrum of DelDOT, and it's great to work with the public, great to work with the co-workers. So I am happy to be a lifelong DelDOT person.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to discuss this topic. And it's one that really is getting a lot more attention.
Yes.
Especially in, as I mentioned, in areas where we're seeing a lot of growth, Sussex County specifically. And when we were just talking about this idea, we think it was worth spending some more time doing a deeper dive to help people better understand DelDOT's role in the land use development process and help everyone just have a better picture of how things happen. And a lot of times I think there may be some confusion about that. So this is a great opportunity for us to talk about that and hear this is how things happen. And I think what we'll just start with at the top is what is at a very high level, what is DelDOT's role in the land use process and in new development?
Sure. Yes. Well, it can be very complex, and like I always say, knowledge is power. So it's good to learn about what the process is. Our viewers and people who are listen to the podcast, they don't need to know all the ins and outs of it. That's our job, but to really help what the basics are. So I'll start out with the foundation, which is our MOU, and I'll probably have a lot of acronyms, but I will try to, and please let me know if I don't say the actual meaning of the acronym. But
as a government agency, we use a lot of acronyms as
also
well.
Also the military.
That's right.
Yes, very much so. So our MOU, which is our Memorandum of Understanding, we have one of those with each of the counties. So they basically spell out what DelDOT's role is and what the county's role is. So it also lays out that what the regulations are and what we need to abide by. So that's our kind of footprint for how we do the development coordination process. And we'll go into that a bit more. But what I do want to say is that unique to Delaware, DelDOT does not make any land use calls. So we do not change the zoning. We don't have any, that part of the process
Right.
is not us. So our main role is access on the state maintained roads. So we have a development coordination manual, a DCM, that basically spells out the coordination between the county, the developer, the engineer of record, and it is our job to make sure that we specify that the access onto the state maintained road is safe and efficient. So the players so I have a screen up here now. Overall, it's safe access for all. And those players are the land use agencies, the developers that, own the actual property, the engineers of record. So the engineer of record is hired by the developer to kind of walk them through the approval process. And then we have our traffic analysis that's done, and I'm going to do an example so it kind of
Great.
like is more understandable. And then we have the record and entrance plan. So generally, that's the players, but overall, DelDOT is anybody that wants access onto a state-maintained road needs to go through DelDOT to make sure that they are doing all of the appropriate things to have a safe entrance, to have a well-maintained and usable infrastructure.
And some of our listeners may not know that DelDOT is responsible for 90% of the roads in our state. If you've lived in other states, you may have had a county taking care of your road, or a
Yep.
township, or we just don't have that here in Delaware. It's either a municipality.
Mhm.
We have about 10% of the roads are maintained by municipalities, but otherwise it's us.
Exactly.
It's DelDOT, and we have that responsibility. So any development that's largely taking place, we do play a role in that.
Yes, very true. So if we go to the next slide. So I pulled a picture of a development, not a local one, not sure if anybody can see, but it's actually in the UK. So they're on the opposite side of the road. So
And it's a lovely roundabout that I see
it
in
is
this
a
picture
lovely,
as well.
I specifically picked one that had a roundabout. So
And for those that are listening, we do have this streaming on our YouTube feed as well. So when Pam's referencing some of these slides and examples, if you have an opportunity to check it out on YouTube, that's the best place to see
Yeah.
these as well.
for sure. So when a developer is thinking about a new development, they normally go through the plus process, and that's from the Office of State Planning, and that gives the developer the first look at, like, are there going to be issues? Are there wetlands? Are there hazardous materials? So that is the first part of the process, and DelDOT is required, and we do a lot of plus process comments on development. So it gives the developer a first look at, is this a good development project?
Okay.
The next part is that once they have retained an engineer record, then they come to us for their traffic analysis. So the developer is required to determine the amount of trips that go in and out of their site. So it can be an industrial,
Sure.
commercial, residential, mixed use and the like.
And
So
there's formulas for each of those.
there is.
Where we say, well, for a commercial of a certain size, we
Square
can.
footage. Yep.
There's an estimate of about how many vehicles come in and out of that on a regular basis. So we use that
Yes.
formula.
Yes, exactly. So, for instance, like a single-family home, as part of the analysis, you would estimate about 10 trips going in and out of that development per single-family
Okay.
house. So that's people going to work, they're going to the grocery store, they're taking their kids to soccer. So that's an approximation, but yes, you are right. We have formulas for for almost all types of uses, depending on what the density is and the like.
Okay.
So they're required to not only analyze their site entrances, so they have an idea as to where their entrances, they want their entrances to be. And then they're also required to do some outside analysis, depending on how many trips, for instance, that they are going to generate. So they have to analyze the surrounding intersections to make sure that their new development isn't going to put an undue pressure on those intersections. So once that has been back and forth with the developer, we get a final analysis, and then they are allowed to go into the recordation and entrance plan process. So that really is determining what the size entrance is, the finalizing the number of entrances. There is if the developer needs to put in turn lanes, if they, like for instance, need to build a roundabout or they have to put a signal in.
Sure.
We also require, depending on the size of the development and where they are in the land use, they may need to put in sidewalks, shared use paths, or they may need to contribute to like if we have a capital transportation project that is in the surrounding area that they're going to affect, they may need to monetarily give us funding for that. So that is the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah.
And then once they get approval from the recordation and entrance plans, then they can go to our public works districts, and then they can get their permits to actually begin the work. But we have laid that groundwork with like solid traffic analysis, making sure that the developer is going to build what they're supposed to build. And then we also have safeguards in place for releasing a certain number of building permits, depending on, so a lot of these developments are phased, especially the very large ones. So they are required, just say, for instance, to put their entrance in first, and then just say at the 10th building permit, then they may need to put in a right-hand turn lane. And then at the 25th building permit, they may need to put in the left-hand turn lane. So we very much have a robust analysis to make sure that the developer is putting in the infrastructure to be safe for everyone.
And the developer, when we come back with our comments, they're responsible for those improvements as well. So if, as you mentioned, turn lanes or whether it's an intersection improvement, that ultimately falls on the developer to bear that cost. So
yes.
That's something that we do work out with them through this process as well, saying, well, this as you were saying, just to summarize, these permits can't move forward until X, Y, and Z are done.
Yes.
Or at this time, you said the right lane goes in, or this time a left turn lane goes in. So all of these things are spelled out in great detail
Very much so.
as these projects move forward, because again, they have to be able to accommodate the traffic that's being generated as a result of these projects. So
Exactly.
that's a very I think that should hopefully give the audience good sense of, it's not just, well, they can just build it and then we see what the impacts are and then we figure it out and it takes a couple years and we make the road improvements. That's not how we want to do things. We want
Yes,
to have those improvements in place from day one.
exactly. I think you know a lot about this. Are you sure you don't want a job in development coordination, CR?
I like to say I know I know a lot about a little, so I always appreciate the chance to talk with the experts, though.
Oh, understood.
So when we're talking about the development process and going through that, I think one of the questions that we often hear is, can DelDOT, what happens if there's a project that we have concerns about? Do we have a mechanism where we slow development or stop it because we have concerns about the impact on transportation infrastructure? Or walk us through how that works when we think that there's issues that need to be addressed.
Sure. Yes. So DelDOT cannot stop development. So that if the approvals are done at the land use agency for that, our main role is to make sure that the developer is mitigating the impacts of their development.
Okay.
That being said, we have the use of phasing for the record plan and the entrance plans can be utilized, and that's our way to make sure that the intersections aren't being maximized in a bad way. So that's why, like I had said, depending on the release of building permits is what. It's not really slowing the process. It's really just making sure that the developers are going to do the work that they have to do so that they can mitigate for
Right.
that work.
We build in benchmarks.
Correct.
We build in these
Exactly.
benchmarks to say you can't proceed with this phase of the development until the improvements are done. Okay.
Correct. Yep, exactly. And with the size, for some of the developments for this, how big and how expansive they are, some of the developers are required to do a lot of work. I mean, building roundabouts and putting in signals and crosswalks and, making sure that the infrastructure is just as safe as before they got there.
And I think that's something that we've really been focused on, at least I would say that at least the past decade of focusing on it's not just about moving cars.
Yes.
It's really this multimodal approach,
Yeah.
making sure that we're connecting sidewalks, making sure that we've got, as you said, crosswalks. Do we have bike lanes, or is there a separated bike path? Where are the public transportation facilities?
Yeah.
So, all those pieces come into play now when we're seeing development happening or redevelopment. Really,
Yeah.
if it's not just about brand new development. When there's redevelopment, we want to make sure that all modes of transportation are supported.
Absolutely. And maybe something just to point out too, because we do get a lot of questions, is that why does DelDOT make the developer build a shared use path or a sidewalk to nowhere? And that
Yeah.
is, so
Yeah.
yes, so the developer they're required, depending on where they are required to build the multimodal transportation infrastructure, sidewalks, shared use path. But we only can require them to build it on their property. So unlike DelDOT, that would have a corridor wide there, where we would build 2 miles of a shared use path. We are requiring the developer to build that infrastructure on their property, with the long game being that when we have enough development along that roadway, we will then we will have the developer build those sections. For instance, like Brentford Road. So there was a lot of development that happened on Brentford Road that we made them build all of this infrastructure. And now we have a capital transportation project in the CTP that is then going to connect all of those. So making the developer put that infrastructure in, that's going to have the taxpayers have less cost for a capital transportation project, since we really just need to connect the dots, and then we'll have that whole big multi-use.
Right. And ideally, right, those sidewalks to nowhere become sidewalks to somewhere.
They do.
And
Yes.
that's
I like that.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yes.
And again, using examples, I think anyone can think of an area, an older area especially.
Yes.
I think of a Route 202 corridor, for example. You may have patches of sidewalk, but again, because it's older development that's been there a long time, we don't have that connected system along there. And those are things that we're working to address across the department. How do we work around those issues? But yeah, looking at how we're connecting those multimodal features in is definitely important as we try to encourage people to use other modes of transportation and not just rely on their car, because that also helps eliminate some of these traffic issues when we have more people using public transportation and bikes and walking. So those are all critical pieces as well. When we're also thinking about DelDOT and the land use process, it's a delicate balance, because we want to make sure, as with the examples you've given of making sure that we are looking at each project thoughtfully and looking at what that impact is. We also have to keep in mind the business aspect of it.
Yes.
And it's important for the department to we want business to grow here. We want businesses to bring good jobs here to Delaware as well. So it's something that we want to make sure that we do our due process and go through all the necessary checks and reviews, but also ensure that we are moving things along so we aren't impeding development at the same time.
Yes, very much so. And we do, so for that, to that end, we do have a very robust performance, metrics that we track. So our development coordination section on average does about 2,500 plan reviews per year.
Wow. Yeah.
So that is a lot for that. And then we also have metrics. So if we can go to the next slide, we have as I said, a robust metrics on when the plans. So it's kind of like a back and forth. So the developer's engineer will develop the entrance plans. They submit that to us for review. We'll make sure that the stormwater management is good, that the safety aspects, if they need guardrail, what the lengths of the turn lanes are supposed to be, all of that. So we have one of the misconceptions that I hear often is that, DelDOT is like impeding the process. It takes forever to get a plan set through DelDOT approval, but we're making sure, it's our job to make sure that the plans that the developers are going to build are safe and to our standards. So we have on the screen there, we have sections of blue that are the DelDOT review times. So as you can see, a lot of those blue sections are are very specific because we normally have a 30-day review.
That's our goal.
Yes, exactly. So they get us the plans. We send it out to all the peer reviewers, like the stormwater management, guardrail, and the like. They bring all their comments back. We give the comments back to the developer, and then we have performance metrics, but the engineer of records don't. So they can take as long, which is completely fine, but it is, I think it's a misconception to think that it's DelDOT that's always holding up the process, that the engineer of records also take time to correct the plans and resubmit them. And as you can see on the bar chart, there's a lot more green than there is blue.
And again, the green represents the private party.
Correct.
The private party moving through the development
Yes.
process. And again, that they can do so on their timeline.
Exactly.
But we have our goals, and that's our target. So that's really good to know that, again, we are focused on moving things through at an appropriate pace, so that again, we know that when businesses want to grow or locate here in Delaware, that they're able to do so at a pace that is that makes sense for them as well, and we continue to encourage that economic development activity that makes our state a great place to live.
Yeah, it's huge, and our executive management has made a huge strides to make sure that the economic development projects. We actually have a expedited review team that specifically does the economic development projects as well as affordable housing. So we expedite the review, and we have a partnership between the land use agency, the developer, and us. We all kind of agree to make sure that we're going to follow this fast track process. So we 100% have made strides to make sure that economic development projects and affordable housing has the fast track in approvals.
Well, that's great to hear, and a lot of credit to you and your team for doing that. And as we look ahead, we're continuing to see growth happening in the state,
Yes.
and it doesn't appear to be slowing. Delaware has become a very desirable place for people to live. Those of us that are here know that, but I think the word is out, and we're seeing seeing more people wanting to locate here. And I think one of the logical questions is how is DelDOT as a department planning for this growth, and
Sure.
How do we accommodate those infrastructure needs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have a multifaceted approach. So if we can go to the next slide, and that is we have a vast network of transportation improvement districts, and I'll go into that a bit. And then we also have our planning studies, our corridor-wide, long-term, short, medium, long-term planning studies. And then we also work very closely with the MPOs, the Metropolitan Planning organizations in the state. So we have a transportation improvement district, or a
TID.
TID, yes, is
as we commonly refer to it.
Yes, exactly, because transportation improvement district is a lot of
it's a mouthful.
A lot of words. Yeah. So it is a specific geographic area where DelDOT and the land use agency have determined that, we want the growth to be centered in those metropolitan areas. And the great thing about that is that so it's a geographical boundary, and we have said we want development growth to happen in this area because when we know where the growth is going to occur, we can then plan for what the transportation improvements are going to actually be. Plus, that follows, sewer and water, like all of the other ancillary infrastructure in that area as well. So we then do a large range traffic analysis. We study every intersection in that area and forecast out based on what the zoning and the land use is for that. It's a parcel by parcel base. So we're not just doing these sweeping generalizations. We take the information from the land use comprehensive plans and we grow out what the max growth is going to be in that area. And then we say, okay, based on that maximum growth, so basically every parcel in that area has been built out. What is the transportation impact going to be?
It's almost like having a crystal ball.
It is. Yes.
It gives us a sense of, okay, we know that 500 new houses are going to go on this parcel here. It's currently a 2-lane road.
Yep.
That's not going to work.
Correct.
That's not going to work in the long run.
Yes, exactly. So once we do all of that analysis, the great part about that is that if a development project is in those areas, then they don't have to do their own traffic analysis. So since we've already taken their development into account, that is very beneficial for them because not only is it cheaper, but it actually is a lot faster because then they can go directly into their entrance plans and such. So what happens is that the developer, if they are in a TID, they're still required to build their entrances. They're still required to build their turn lanes into their entrances. And if they need to put a signal at their entrance or a roundabout, they're required to do all of that. But any off-site improvements, so say if they were going to be required to do something to like the next intersection down. Instead of doing that improvement, they pay a TID fee to us, and then we can then thoughtfully plan when we need to get that, intersection done.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it really is a great partnership between all the stakeholders, and it is a defined plan, so we aren't just willy-nilly it, and that's a great thing. So,
and just to reiterate what you said is that this isn't just DelDOT saying, "Hey, we need a TID here." This is all the stakeholders.
Yes.
We're working with the counties, and we're working with the MPOs and the land use arms.
Exactly.
This is. We work collaboratively to create these agreements. And
Very
how
true.
many TIDs do we currently have in the state?
Yeah, so we have 14. There's 7 of them are in operation, and then the remaining 7 of them are in process. So we are working through either the traffic analysis or what the fees are going to be or what the improvements are going to be. So it really is a robust, and we estimate, about $800 million. So currently with the TIDs in operation now, that if we go to the, not the next slide, but at the slide after that. Yeah, so there's about $800 million worth of transportation improvements.
Wow.
So it really is a robust, very good partnership. And so for instance, I have gotten a few questions about down south about the TID projects, but currently in the current capital transportation plan, we do have about a third of the projects are TID projects. So that is a great thing that like we are doing the improvements that are in the actual plan.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, and especially as again, looking at how DelDOT plans, we have our 6-year plan. That's how we budget. That's how we look to get projects underway or move through the design and development process. Knowing that, and again, I look at this screen here, which is a great dashboard, showing that hey, all right, we that's about $800 million. You said. Planning for that type of development, that doesn't just all happen at once.
Yeah.
So knowing, okay, here's the projects that need to be put in at this time, and helping to account for that in our budget is important. So
yeah, and anyone can go on this dashboard if they want to get more information. They can click on the actual TIDs, and it will show what the specific improvements are per TID.
That's a fantastic resource to look at. So, when we're, having these TIDs is I think a great step forward. And when was the first one really developed?
Yeah, so I believe the first few were were just below the canal.
Sure, in the greater Middletown
in
area.
That area.
Yep.
So Easttown, Westtown, and the southern one. I'm not exactly sure what the year was, but I can get that.
Well, that's fine.
I think it was in the 2000s, but I could be wrong.
All good. So obviously those are an important tool now that we're using. We're also doing a lot of planning studies.
Yes.
And we've had great engagement. I've really been impressed with whether it's the 5 Points Working Group, Coastal Corridors, just to mention a couple in Sussex County, where we've had very extensive and comprehensive planning studies with tremendous public participation, and that's a critical part of this.
Exactly.
We need the public helping. We need their feedback in helping us shape what the future looks like.
Yeah.
And it's important to, I think, having everybody at the table.
Yes, I agree. Public interaction and having people go out to the workshops, having them comment online, that would be, we want to hear from them. But yes, these transportation projects and the problems or the challenges that we have, it's not just a one size fits all. So we have the TIDs, but like you said, CR, we also have the corridor ride or big picture area wide studies. So we do some of those in house. So Coastal Corridors is done in house, and the Southwest one and the 5 Points. But then we also work with our MPO partners as well to do things in the Ardens. And right now we're doing a Kirkwood. Will Mapco is doing a large Kirkwood Highway corridor. So those big ones that are done by the MPOs, there are projects that get put into the CTP in that way. So we are actually trying to do a multifaceted approach with the TIDs, with our big range planning studies, because as you can see, not all of the state is in the
correct
TID.
Right.
So we do have a lot of efforts outside of that. But I mean, they are like, we are growing a lot, and we do, we are cognizant and aware, and that's why we also have excuse me, monitoring efforts as well. For instance, on Route 9 down south, we are constantly making sure that we like what the pulse of the, congestion is.
Sure.
So that when there are areas, we already have some projects already in the CTP to widen Route 9, but we are monitoring the other sections within Route 9 and when and if they will be required to be widened. So it is a multifaceted approach, but we very much love to hear from the public and the community groups because I don't live down there, you don't live down there. So it really is to hear the day-to-day things is a great thing. We always want to hear that feedback and suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we really try to get people involved and educated, and we'll hear a lot. Well, you did this piece, but you haven't done this yet, and there is a process at work.
Yes,
it would be great if we could do everything at once.
Yes,
unfortunately, there are limited resources, so we have to be methodical in when certain pieces happen when. But to your Route 9 example, we've spent a lot of time focusing on that 5 Points area. Well, as we're implementing those improvements, we're seeing that focus now shift to the west. Well, okay, that's we're addressing those issues that have been a long time issues at 5 Points. Well, now Route 9, Route 9 that feeds into it is becoming a focal point. So, again, we're engaged and also working side by side with the local stakeholders, and just to touch on the role that MPOs play, and our local land use agencies, they really help identify what they believe to be the most important and impactful projects.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the MPOs really are the link between the local municipalities and us, because they hear what their concerns are. They bring projects up to the MPO. That's why the Ardens were done. We have a Concord Pike one. So the local land use municipalities bring concerns up to the MPO, and the MPO really does a great job at taking all of those all of those concerns, because DelDOT, why we do a lot, we can't do the metropolitan planning for the entire state. It's just too big.
Yes.
They really are our outreach and partners to help that grassroots for the local land use.
So we'll MAPCO in the northern part of the state. We've got the Kent County MPO in the central part of the state. And then in Sussex County has its own land use department that really helps manage that part of the process.
Yeah, we do have a small Salisbury area near Delmar Seaford in that area. So, but for the rest of the county, we do work very intimately with the land use agency.
And for those that are curious about, how do I see something get done? I'd like to see, as we said, a missing section of sidewalk put in, or it'd be great to have a bike path. That's where this process starts. It starts, get involved with those local agencies. And more than likely, you may find that that's already on their radar. They're focused on that's a very specific geographic area. reaching out to them, having those conversations. You may find, hey, yep, we've already got something in the process. It's just not, it's not prioritized right now. Well, how do we prioritize it? And
Yeah.
again, getting involved is a great way to help see those projects, get done ultimately.
Yeah.
Move them through that development process where they do become actionable. So
Yeah.
that's
Agree.
that's a bit of a suggestion. If there's a project that for our listeners that's you've looked at for a long time and have said, it'd be great if we did this here, or what about this? Getting involved with those local agencies is really the first step in that
Yeah.
process. Talking with your local representatives and legislators, that's how these things ultimately happen.
Agree. Yep. It's that grassroots, going through the process, and we've even gotten really great ideas and suggestions even through a reported issue that have been. It's not just for potholes
Sure.
and stuff. If they have an area where there's a gap in the sidewalk and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, if they also want to do a reported issue there, we can.
That's a great suggestion. And for our listeners, if you go to the website and you click on the citizen tab, there's a comment form there, a general comment form. You can fill that out very easily. That will come to us, and we'll take a look at it. And there's no bad ideas. We're always interested in hearing what people their thoughts are, especially for those that live in a specific area. You're there traveling in that area every day. Hearing those comments and feedback help us ultimately
It's valuable.
make those decisions that will benefit our communities. So. Pam, this has been really enlightening. Thank you so
I've
much.
loved
It can
yeah.
be, when you start thinking about land use and management and how the infrastructure role can be the proverbial, you're drinking from the fire hydrant,
Yes.
right? But no, you've
Yes.
done a great job of helping to really boil that down. Any closing comments about planning and our role
Sure.
in general?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it all really just comes back to we would be. I mean, this process is complex. It can be. It has a lot of intricacies.
Sure.
And there are, and in my mind, the more information that us Delawareans know about the process, it is a very transparent process, and we would be happy to go in depth more if there are more specific things, maybe in a specific geographic area that people have questions on. The more that our people know, the more they can be informed, and that to me is that, again, that knowledge is power, and just having feeling good about the process, that it's transparent and understandable. We try to make sure that it's not a scary process, and it's something that everybody can learn about. So we would be happy to do more outreach if there are things that are that we hear that can be more out. If there are community groups that have questions,
Sure.
we can come to your HOA. We can explain the process. So we're here to make the process more relatable.
And I think a lot of
understandable.
times what triggers interest is a development plan.
Oh, yeah.
People hear, oh, wait, there's a new warehouse is going in. How is this going to
Yes.
impact traffic? And that's when we see people, we'll see interest ramp up. And, to your point, if people have questions, let us know.
Yes.
We're here to inform and educate about how this process will work.
Yes.
And we want people to be engaged and feel good that we're taking all those concerns into account when we're looking at how development not only impacts areas where there may not be currently development, but areas that have been long in standing, and we could see changes as a result of that development. So it's something we want to make sure that people feel comfortable with the process and have a good understanding. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
To share your insights and your knowledge with us on this process. And for those of you that have been listening, thank you for your time. And if you have other questions, please reach out to us. If you have a topic for a future podcast that you would like us to discuss, please email us at dotpr@delaware.gov and just put podcast topic in the subject line. We're always looking for new topics to discuss in greater detail. Really the whole idea behind this podcast was we're so focused on really just getting things in quick hits to people. We know people are busy. We know people have a lot of demands on their time and attention, but there are topics that we think merit a deeper dive, and taking a time to have a conversation and really flesh out some of those issues more is important.
Yeah,
so
it's great.
Thank you for doing that on the development process with us. And I would also be remiss if I didn't thank the man behind the curtain, our multimedia coordinator extraordinaire, Chris Owens. Chris, thank you for making the magic happen with our podcasts and the many videos you see across DelDOT. Chris does a fantastic job, and thank you, Chris, for helping to make today's podcast valuable. So with that, thank you again for your time. Thank you, Pam, and please travel safely.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.